Fate Grand Order is one of the oldest gacha games, still available today. The massive success of the game cannot be understated, but what does FGO have that other gacha games don't? If you were judging the game just based on how it looks, you most certainly wouldn't call it a high quality game. Yet it is widely considered to be one of the most successful gacha games to have ever been produced. But why? Is it due to the incredible IP that the Fate franchise is, with the incredible and amazing looking waifus and husbandos? Does it have one of the best gameplays to have ever been seen in any gacha game? Or is it just because it has a well written story? I was curious to know why and how Fate Grand Order still manages to be one of the most played gacha games to this day. To figure that out, I immersed myself in a community, created content for the game, played it for over 100 days, just to finally understand the mystery behind the incredible success of Fate Grand Order. If you play any game, one of the first things you get introduced to is the gameplay. How does it feel to play? Is it fun? How well can you see the titty physics of your waifu? Everyone has their own preference on what is important to them regarding the gameplay, and as many of you might know, for me the most important thing is that it's challenging. Strategy and in-game knowledge should be more valuable than just having the best of the best characters. As for FGO, it felt like they hit the arrow perfectly in between. I was blessed with a Morgan, a Koyanskaya, and a friend called Aqua, which had an MP5 Morgan at their disposal. As you can imagine, those are one of the best meta waifus in the game, even though I didn't pull them for that reason. Chapters are called singularities, and first you have to beat 7 of them to unlock the next few, which are called 1.5 singularities. Not surprising, rarely in the early story I was required to use any strategy with the meta squad. But there was one single fight that felt so rewarding upon completion that it's probably my most memorable. This fight was against a massive skeleton. The boss had the ability to seal your skills and noble phantasm at the end of the round. After one death, I realized this won't apply for those that subbed in after one of my starting 3 servants died. I came up with the idea of just having 3 servants as cannon fodder, destined to die. This way it would allow me to use the abilities for one single round. And since I used a Musashi max level with a max noble phantasm, this worked flawlessly, winning me one of my favorite battles. Other than that, there were here and there some bosses with unique mechanics, but all in all, it was smooth sailing through the first 7 singularities. The 1.5 singularities were next, and I was hopeful that now it starts to become more challenging. The first of those was Shinjuku, and I really loved the aesthetics and the enemy design. All the more disappointing it was to realize that I would deem it to be one of the easiest singularities I've played so far. Even though I want to continue the grind of beating all the story stages. There was an event called Nerofest that just released. This is where I would finally get to experience the real FGO gameplay. The event stages, which are called CQs. Those bosses had many different unique mechanics and showed the depth that the gameplay can truly have. I was still a new player, and so many of my servants weren't leveled. I struggled a lot trying to beat some of these CQs. Alone, I could have never done it, but with the help of knowledgeable people in my chat and hours upon hours of throwing my head against the wall, we managed to not just beat most of them, but all of them. And this goes to show that good servants are important, but knowledge is indeed far superior. Not only was it super fun to do, but I felt some kind of accomplishment after I saw the battle finish message. But sadly, this will be the last time I would get this feeling of accomplishment. Once the Nerofest was over, I returned to the 1.5 singularities, but this time with even better leveled servants. Not only was I not struggling, but it felt like most of the normal singularities were much harder than those. So my stream would mostly become just chatting with FGO in the background. Before I even realized it, all the 1.5 singularities were resolved, and with that, I unlocked the Lost Belts. But what are these? The Lost Belts are regarded as what makes FGO great. Not only were they known to have peak story, but also would crank up the difficulty by a lot. I am very confident that I have now a rough idea about its gameplay. I value a well thought out battle system a lot, Memorizing what each skill in Noble Phantasm does is a big task on its own. But there is more. Each character has a unique class skill. Those can be up to 7 different passive skills for each character. But wait, there's more. Alignments. Each character belongs to a category. Lawful good, lawful balanced, neutral good, neutral balanced, and so on and on. Also, each character have an attribute. This decides what kind of species they are. Man, earth, sky, etc. There are different damage multipliers for that as well. In the Neurofest, there was a CQ with the boss having a gimmick where it was relevant to know what kind of alignment your servants have. I love depth in a game. I absolutely adore having to learn character skill set to improve my decision making. But I believed having to know so many little details just for one character is a bit too much. Luckily, those are rare instances of it being super important. And I can imagine those mechanics were fine with the number of characters it had when it launched. But since it has over 300 different characters right now, it's impossible for anyone that starts the game right now to fully master it. Especially because a character has 3 skills. A skill doesn't equal one effect. As an example, let's look at Korean Skies of Light's second skill. Massacring Technique. Human. A level 10. Apply human special attack for a single ally plus gain C stars level 10. Trying to fully understand this and remember everything for just this one skill is hard. It would not be a problem if I would be able to say it's just one of the extreme examples, but many characters have skills with a description as long with as many effects as this one. Since I played it casually, I wasn't too bothered about all the little things, and I've heard most of the players don't care about it either, unless the enemy has certain gimmicks or their character buffs a certain type. Either way, as for the gameplay, I do enjoy it a lot, but for anyone joining the game nowadays, the amount of knowledge you would need to learn to fully master it is a mountain a size hard to even imagine. But the gameplay is probably one of the least common reasons why some will continue playing the game. The most appealing factor for any new player to play it, and probably why the game became so large in the first place, is something pretty much no other successful gacha game has, and that is an IP behind it. And to briefly explain it, intellectual property from another established source is what IP means. The Fate franchise is one of the most massive, if not the most massive franchise in all of anime. As you can imagine, the number of already established characters they're able to put into their game is far beyond the norm. This brings the advantage of when a new servant is getting released, you already have a connection to the character. You might have gotten to know them before they were even announced in the game. Not only do you get to play as one of your favorite characters from a media you consumed, but also have various outfits to unlock, lore behind it, additional skins, ultimate animations, etc. The reason why so many people have given FGO a chance has truly to do with its IP. I can't imagine a universe where FGO was as successful as it is today with normal gacha game characters like Genshin or Nikke. The characters are without a doubt the #1 reason why most of its players gave it a chance in the first place. But would this truly be enough reason for them to keep playing it after 6 years of its release? The answer is a clear no. It doesn't matter how good the characters are, if the gameplay is too repetitive and plain, most will leave after a short while. And sadly, as for the gameplay, this is pretty much true, at least for the people that have played it for about 6 years. But then, why are still so many playing FGO? Since the IP is the reason to give the game a chance in the first place, what does FGO possibly have to keep the people interested in the game? Well, it's pretty simple. It's because FGO is a failed gacha game. Beside the characters, it is pretty much worse in every aspect to any other gacha game released in the recent years. The gameplay is decent, but just decent. The UI is outdated. The gacha rates are one of the worst to have ever been seen. The music is awesome, but is about on the same level as every other successful gacha game. But there is one thing alone, which FGO takes the crown, where not even most AAA games can get even close. This is the story. I haven't read everything. Of course not. This takes about 700 hours, if not more, to catch up with all the story and events. But I try my best to read some of it. And I just started with Lost Belt 1, and from the very first hour of reading, You feel how much passion went into writing dialogues. This is not a story some random person came up with in a few minutes. The story is well thought out, and the person translating the dialogues is certainly very well versed in the English language. I have heard more than once that some refer to The Lost Belts as one of the best written stories in all of the visual novel genre. I need to mention the fact that I personally was never a story guy, and probably never become one. But I did try my best to understand where those people are coming from. And I think I understand now what is so motivating to play FGO. The Lost Belts are some of the hardest content the game has to offer. To be able to read the story you are so invested in, you must beat the stages to unlock the continuation of it. For those players hyped about the story, it's one of the most rewarding things to be able to continue reading after clearing a difficult stage. Of course, this keeps you hooked on the game. FGO has managed to create an environment where they utilize all the mechanics a gacha game has to their max potential. You read the story, you start to love it. You're stuck on a stage. You do gacha and hope to get better servants. You might get one of your favorite characters you are loving so much from the story. You level your servants and make your waifus and husbandos stronger. You can now beat the stage with the characters you just got or leveled. You can finally continue reading the story and see new characters in the story you are a big fan of. Sadly, there's another stage you're struggling at. Repeat the cycle. This is how it is, at least for those that don't have an endgame account. Even though I'm not as invested in the story as many of its player base, I learned how valuable it is for a gacha game to have a good story. But thanks to the IP, it's way more likely you already have a connection with its universe before even playing the game. Already having a connection to their characters adds so much to the experience, and even if you have never heard or seen anything of Fate, once you start playing the game, every anime you watch of the franchise is so much more enjoyable since you get to watch your favorite servants fight against each other in an incredibly well animated anime. So it doesn't matter with what you start first. Once you start with one media of the franchise, every other media is gonna be so much more enjoyable to consume. But not everything about FGO is good, right? As previously mentioned, the UI, the gameplay, the outdated design are dragging the game down. But many would argue that gacha rates are one of them as well. Most gacha games nowadays range from 0.5% chance to 2% to get a high rarity character. Games that have a chance above 1% are considered generous. This is true in every way, but after playing gacha for over 8 years, I feel like most don't understand the big difference between high gacha rates and low gacha rates. While it's amazing if you start a new gacha game to get the characters you love quite early, you might get overwhelmed by an immense amount of cool and amazing units. So many in fact, that you don't even get to fully enjoy everyone. Once you play the game for years, you will have most of its units without having to spend any money. You could consider this a good thing, but what many don't realize, it takes away the excitement of pulling a unit you always wanted, which eventually will make the game stale for some people that play the game for the gacha aspect. Another disadvantage is that at no point were you forced to use units that are low tier, because why would you use a weaker version of characters, same or worse looking than the one that you already have? There is a reason why a game like Summoner's War or FGO are so successful long term with low gacha rates. You can be playing for years and still missing very basic units. But the excitement you get once you obtain them cannot be compared to what it is like to a game where you get every character immediately. People tend to complain about low gacha rates, but at the same time, it is what makes gacha games interesting. If you take away the entire gacha aspect of a gacha game, in many ways, it's just an inferior version of a normal AAA game. Being forced to play with what you have and not with what you want is something mainly exclusive to gacha. Thanks to this, you discover units you would have usually never played in the first place. Not having power creep characters from the get-go will teach you better how the game works than any tutorial can. High gacha rates are great for free-to-play players, but once you start spending money, it becomes more of a task to get everyone and lowers the excitement of hitting the jackpot immensely. In the end, it comes down to preference. For games like FGO with terrible gacha rates, even for the oldest players, to summon something is way more exciting than for a veteran player in a generous gacha game. The reason why FGO is so successful even for today's standards is not something that can be pinpointed on one thing. There is a reason to give FGO a try. This was the IP. Then you stopped being invested in it. That was collecting your favorite servants. And finally, why you would continue playing it? Well, that was the story. And then the many minor things like the interesting gacha raids, cool events, or just the amazing community with their fan art cosplays, or well, doujins. I haven't addressed the community aspect as much as I would have liked to. As a streamer, my impression will completely differ from what you will experience. When I started streaming FGO, it wasn't the only gacha game I played that day. I played 3, and this was just a part of a bigger series I've done to test every gacha game. FGO wasn't the best game I played in that series. Actually, FGO wasn't even the best game I played that day. Gameplay wise, Guardian Tales was way more exciting and way more to my liking. But out of all games I tried, none felt as welcoming as the FGO community. While the gameplay was decent, the people I was able to talk to while streaming were so enjoyable that this was the main reason to add FGO as the second game on my main channel. Maybe it's not even the game itself that is the reason why it is so successful today. Maybe it is just the community carrying this lackluster game to its current success. Throughout the video, I maybe made some points that you think are debatable or maybe straight up wrong, so please correct me in the comment section. I am very aware that a video like this will start a huge debate, so please at least keep it civilized. And to add just some fire to the fuel, I would like to ask you for a hot take. And I will end my video with one as well. I think FGO character would be way hotter if they would just wear more.